Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the Federalist Files. On today's show, Derek Chauvin files for a new trial, Donald Trump banned from Facebook yet again, the DOJ interfering with the election count in Arizona, and a study judging the effectiveness of mitigation efforts for COVID-19.
You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but there's one fact I want every American to know. People who are not fully vaccinated can still die every day from COVID-19.
So if you're not vaccinated, you can die every single day. You can have an event of death every single day from COVID-19. There's Joe Biden, our president, in pristine condition as always. Today I have a pretty big show. Once again, pretty giant news blast in the middle of the week. To start off, there's Derek Chauvin. He's filing for a new trial, and it's kind of related to this new occurring evidence that's coming out. You have this guy named Brandon Mitchell. He was, I think he was juror number 41 or 51. A lot of these jurors, they're supposed to be confidential, their identity. He came out pretty much saying, hey, I was in the trial, and he goes on, he takes a little interview with NBC News, and then they find some photos of him out there with at BLM rallies, as well as at George Floyd rallies, as well as wearing a shirt that says something like, let me see exactly what it says specifically. It says "knee off of our necks," and it's a photo of Martin Luther King. So I'm going to play the short clip from NBC, and it's him actually talking a little bit about the trial. Play 5.
For Derek Chauvin has filed a motion for a new trial after Chauvin's conviction for the murder of George Floyd. This comes amid a separate controversy over a photo of one of the jurors, Brandon Mitchell, wearing a T-shirt that says, "Get your knee off our necks." Mitchell spoke to CBS This Morning, you'll recall, after the trial.
So now what we have is there's a person that did not disclose the information that was needed and asked of him. Apparently also he lied on some documents about knowing about some of this. And really he's just an activist. I think he also started his own podcast now as well. I have a short clip of him on the Get Up Mornings podcast with Erica Campbell. And you can hear at the very end, I think she asks him about a podcast to plug. But he talks to her about what he thinks jury duty is. He actually, at some point, he talks about it as if it's activism, a means for societal change. Play 2.
We're talking to Brandon Mitchell. He was juror number 52 in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Brandon, before we wrap, many people don't like jury duty and probably wouldn't respond to the letter that you get in the mail. So what message would you leave to those about saying yes to jury duty?
I mean, it's important. If we want to see some change, we want to see some things going differently, we got to get out there and get into these avenues and get in these rooms to try to spark some change. And that's jury duty is one of the things. Jury duty, voting, all of those things are things we got to do.
And how can people follow you on social media or tune into your podcast?
Yeah, so the Wholesome Pod.
So it turns out that this Brandon Mitchell dude, juror number 52, he is another race hustler, race baiting person. He has a podcast. He's advertising himself now. He's coming out on the mainstream media saying whatever he wants. And this just shows that this is the opinion that's acceptable by society, to have his opinion, the hating on police platform. It's much more acceptable to be that, have that feeling, than be on the opposing side where you think that police, for the most part, probably 99% of them are good, are not looking to go out there and kill people every single day. To have that opinion that is counter-narrative to what the mainstream or the corporate media opinion is. Additionally, on top of this guy already having the BLM hat on, he had the "Don't Step on Our Necks" shirt on. So he's partaken in these protests against police and marches against police brutality. Okay, so he has partaken in this. This is factually true. He goes on NBC, he says it, and NBC purposely I had a clip from them. I'm not even going to play it, but they purposely left out a bunch of information pertaining to him going on these. So they openly admit on their platform, they come out with a video, they have a little small interview with him. He talks about how he's gone to these BLM rallies, whatever, what have you. And then they leave out one very essential part to this story that really gives Chauvin. And to be honest with you, this guy should be actually charged criminally. And I have the unpopular opinion here. I've yet to actually hear this from anybody. This is my personal opinion here. When you go and you lie on questionnaires to become selected for the jury, that is malfeasance. You are doing wrong by the law, by the Constitution. There's supposed to be a due process, and you're prohibiting or you're impeding on the due process of American citizens. And then now we get a slippery slope here where if people can continue to do this is political activism. If I'm a conservative and I'm getting tried for something, you can have liberals that go up there on the jury stand and just lie straight through their questionnaire just so they can get placed on the jury to send me to prison. And it has nothing to do because they have their own personal animus, they have their own personal opinion of me already made up before they even get into the trial. And that's really the point of this interview that he had on Get Up with, I don't even know what this lady's name is again, Erica Campbell. The point was, he said himself, we need people to go and answer and to be in these juries, and we need to do this and we need to do that. So he was coming in with the predetermined opinion already that Chauvin was guilty. He didn't really care about what was presented. He said we need more people getting into this, getting involved. But really, at the end of the day, this isn't like a political activism march. This isn't an activist march. Getting involved. It's going out there and you're supposed to sit there, look at the evidence, and you're supposed to make a determination based off that. For him, it was all about political activism. That's why he's telling other people to go to the jury. And I'm pretty sure if you don't answer the jury, if you don't show up, I'm pretty sure you actually get in trouble for that, for the most part. But more importantly, this is the most important part that NBC left out. So they asked him in this jury questionnaire 2 questions that he lied on. He answered no on both of these questions. So the first question, and it's stated, and I quote, did you or someone close to you participate in any demonstrations or marches against police brutality that took place in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death? No. Okay. Now the other one is, and I quote, other than what you have already described above, have you or anyone close to you participated in protests about police use of force or police brutality? So here's the thing. He was saying this march that he did was somewhere in March, apparently for MLK. Okay, it sounds fine, whatever. So if you want to say this one isn't related to George Floyd's death, that's fine. But the second question, other than that described above, have you participated in any protests about police use of force or police brutality? He answered no. He clearly lied on the questionnaire. There is photographic evidence and him himself indicting himself on national television on NBC News, stating yes, he has done that. So here's what the thing is here. This is the question. It's perjury to lie under oath. Why is there no standard for that for the jury selection? If you're a juror, if you want to become a juror and you sit there and lie through a questionnaire, you become a juror, you now have impeded on the process of a fair and reasonable trial by a jury of your own peers, because now it is no longer fair. You are coming in there with a predisposed opinion of what the outcome of this trial should be. So really, this guy should be criminally charged. That's just me. That's my personal unpopular view that I've actually not heard anybody say. He should be criminally charged is one thing, and the second thing is there has to be a retrial. You had the fact that they even kept this in Minneapolis, Minnesota is the biggest problem more than anything. Every single day these jurors had to drive through the mass of protesters back to their homes every single day. They should have extradited this somewhere else. It's very I can't even believe that they did it the way, and it's just so against everything. It is against historical relevance. There's never been a trial like this where they decide to just keep it right in the location where there's definitely going to be some sort of personal involvement in it or some sort of personal opinion because it hits so close to home. That's the point, and thus that already doesn't make it a fair or reasonable trial. And then on top of that, We have jurors lying. We have jurors going and making a spectacle. This is a race-baiting, race hustler. This is nothing better than an Al Sharpton-like character. These people, this dude came out, now he has a podcast. He's looking to just monetize this situation for himself. This was all so he can go out, he can go make some money off of this. This is race-baiting, this is race hustling at its finest. Okay, and additionally, the DOJ actually had secret plans to arrest Chauvin anyway if he was acquitted. This came out, Fox News, a lot of news sources came out with this story. It's a huge story. It's written by Danielle Wallace. I don't know if it's Danielle Wallace, okay? So a week after Chauvin was found guilty of the murder and manslaughter of George Floyd, the Star Tribune reported that the Justice Department had been gathering evidence for months and had developed a contingency plan to arrest Chauvin at the Hennepin County Courthouse in Minneapolis if there was a mistrial or if the jury failed to convict him on all 3 counts. So if he was to be, if there was a mistrial or he was failed to be convicted, we had the DOJ, the federal government, was ready to arrest him on charges of, I think it goes on to state in this article. Yes, okay. So the plan involved having the Minnesota U.S. Attorney Office bringing federal charges against Chauvin via criminal complaint in order to have him arrested immediately instead of moving through with a grand jury for an indictment, which would have been a slower process. The newspaper reported citing unnamed sources who were not authorized to speak publicly. So we have people that are whistleblowing from within the federal government that are obviously not okay with the police state that has been going on. So federal prosecutors are now planning to ask a grand jury to indict Chauvin and the other 3 former officers involved in Floyd's fatal arrest on May 25th, 2020, on charges of civil rights violations, according to the Star Tribune. The grand jury is made up of a group of 23 citizens who will meet in secret to hear evidence and will ultimately vote whether there is probable cause to bring charges against the former officers, which would land each of them back in federal court for a separate trial. So what we have a loss of due process right now. And it is being controlled by the mob. It's being controlled by the liberals. The liberals now control the law enforcement agencies. The intelligence agencies are probably, I'd say, 80% at least left-wing libs. At least 80%. And what we're having a loss of this. We're having a loss of a due process where they wanted to arrest this dude immediately and charge him without going through a grand jury, which that is a definition of an infringement on due process. You need to be seen to be indicted through a grand jury. There's a whole process. There's a system for this. And the Democrats don't care about the system. They just overthrow the system consistently. They've been doing it for years now. And they expect you all to just for the idea of racial justice to approve of it. And I've been seeing a lot of people saying that there shouldn't have even been a trial for Derek Chauvin. They should have just pretty much took him out back and shot him. That's been the consensus liberal opinion, because they don't believe in the Constitution. They have no morals. They have no standards. It doesn't matter as long as they win. And then that makes you also think, okay, if you have no standards for that, then what's to stop you from pulling me out of my house and just blowing my brains out too? Because then there isn't. There's no rules. They play by no rules. They play by no standards at all on the left. They play for keeps. So I have Alan Dershowitz next, one of the greatest legal minds in the country, what he has to say about this filing for a mistrial. Play 8.
Bring it up on screen, Alan. It seems like this guy was relishing this opportunity and, again, quote, interested in making history.
Can you imagine if he had been on the jury and the jury had acquitted? Would he be publicly identifying himself? It's obviously a jury that wasn't identified. He made the decision to identify himself. He's proud of the verdict he helped to render. And, you know, when you give a combination of all of these factors, I just don't think we can be assured that objective, neutral justice was done in that case.
So in this case, this looks like a violation of due process. There was personal animus, there was personal aggrandizement involved in this juror that was selected because there was an expectation of him, and he lied on jury documents, which I believe warrants a criminal court session. think this guy should be indicted on something. I don't know what he should be indicted on, whether it's some sort of perjury charge or something of that nature. You for sure should be indicted. You can't just sit there and lie to get onto a jury trial. I would never do that. If you go to a jury trial and they ask you if you're conservative, what do you feel about your politics? And you just sit there on the questionnaire and you're just lying about it so you can get into the jury, so you can bring upon you some sort of verdict that is necessary for you and is good for you, and then you come out and you tout it on the mainstream and the corporate media, hack jobs that pretty much lick your boot for you because they're so happy. It is unbelievable. It is astonishing what is currently going on, what is transpiring. I think we're just really rolling very quickly down a hill, and I just don't know when it's really going to stop or there's going to be a pushback. So BLM also, additionally, they came out with this new list of demands. I have a Bongino.com piece. And part of the demands, part of the list, is permanently banning Trump from social media. Additionally, and this is exactly what it states straight from their site, we are joining Representative Ilhan Omar, Rep. Ayanna Pressley, Rep. Cori Bush, Rep. Jamal Bowman, and others who are demanding Trump be immediately convicted in the United States Senate. Trump must also be banned from holding elected office in the future. And additionally, they said he should be permanently banned from social media. So, to begin with, they already ran the whole impeachment hoax trial a second time. There's nothing that they can do. He can't be convicted in the Senate. There's no. This is how stupid these Marxists are, and these communists at BLM. They don't understand that in the Constitution itself, there is no such issue of a bill of attainder. You cannot have the Senate, you cannot have the House of Representatives, you cannot have the Congress run the criminal court system and push criminal charges and convict people on criminal charges. That's what they're calling for. So we have a Marxist organization, because this is what commies do. They take the government, they use the power of the representatives or the legislative branch of government, and they automatically convict with no trial. They are calling for that right now. That is what they do. That's what communists are known to do. And additionally, there is this hypocrisy from the left, obviously. There always is. But really the power right now is that they don't even have to care about the hypocrisy. They can blatantly go ahead, do whatever they want. And that is really it's almost like a superpower. And then when you point out the hypocrisy, you got to understand the communist doesn't care about hypocrisy. It doesn't matter to them. It's like bragging rights for them. The fact that they can do things that are hypocritical and then they turn around, pretty much flip you the middle finger, and they continue to do it even when you point it out. And that's all they do. The commie does not care. The communist does not care about a loss of due process. They don't care about criminal trials with a jury of your own peers. It doesn't matter to them, the communist. The communist just thinks the government should have complete control and power, as well as the mob, and they should just be able to indict you and then convict you. Not even indicting, just convict you. There's no point in indicting. There's no need for a grand jury when you just have senators on your side. That's what they're calling for. They are calling for the United States Congress to start convicting people and start convicting political adversaries. And this is why this is going to get worse and worse, because you don't see anyone from the Republican Party that's really willing to stand up, from the conservative side willing to stand up. I see this really weird push from libertarians. The libertarians are so extremely critical of the right, of the conservatives. And they really should be more critical of the left. The left is the one that's going for you. They're going for your neck. They're going for your throat. But I always see these libertarians commenting on little things that conservatives go out there and put out. Hey guys, how about you go and how about you criticize the left, who's just throwing people in prison, who's just obtaining these warrants with any type of with pretty much unconstitutionally getting warrants on no probable cause. They're just obtaining them, and they're attempting to do it through the Patriot Act. They're doing all these things that you guys are supposed to, as libertarians, be so far and so deeply rooted against. It's so against constitutional principles. And then all you do is you point and you allude to the hypocrisy from the conservative side. The conservatives aren't the one trying to take your guns. They're not the ones trying to imprison you for what you politically think. You get mad at them because they attack Facebook, a big company, and you guys are all about free enterprise and corporations are supposed to be so free and all these other things. And then meanwhile, the corporation has had public subsidies from the government, from the people's taxpayer dollars. They've had subsidies for the last 10, 15 years. And then you still consider them a private corporation that's been, so free market oriented. Meanwhile, they've been shutting down everybody around them. They won't even allow Parler to open up. There's no free market when you have these big corporations, big tech giants that control and also are an extra arm of the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party is telling them to shut people down, to suspend them, and then they're going ahead, they're doing that, and then you're still calling them a private, open, free market corporation. It's just not true. It is factually incorrect. They're not free market based. None of that. They're shutting down. They're a monopoly. They're shutting down any type of adversary that they have, like they did to Parler. If you politically disagree with them, they just throw you off the web servers, and then you go, okay, so I'm going to go with another web server. You go, well, you can't because there is no other ones, and anyone that you go with, they're backed by Amazon Web Services, so what Amazon Web Services will do, they'll threaten them to take away their service, and then they can't run their business too. So you're telling me Amazon, Apple, Google, you're telling me all these Facebook, Twitter, all these huge corporations, they pretty much control everything, where if you disagree with them, you literally cannot even step into this part of a business. There's whole business industries right now that are completely shut down because it's controlled by Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, and what was the other one? Google. It's completely controlled by them, so there's no chance of you even dipping your foot in that. Oh, but that's free market enterprise. So the libertarians, oh no, we can't say anything about the free market and free market enterprise, or else what'll happen to us? Oh, we can't. So let's go fight the conservatives on, I don't know, trying to defend some people from having their businesses shut down because of Amazon Web Services. I mean, I really don't get it. So this Facebook, this ban on Trump, we have the Marxist communists calling for a ban on Trump. And additionally, I have a Daily Caller piece written by Elizabeth Louise. Facebook ends up going through with a ban on Donald Trump. They said they're going to reevaluate their decision to ban Trump. And more importantly, I have this picture. Check this out. So this is the Democrats' official Twitter account. They say, retweet if you agree, and it's a picture. It says, Facebook should permanently ban Donald Trump. So you're having, once again, this isn't a free market. This isn't a free enterprise. This isn't a free corporation. When you have the Democrat Party, the party currently in power with a majority in the legislative branch, as well as the executive, they head the executive branch, pushing Facebook to permanently ban Donald Trump. And we call this, so we're all sitting here and throw our hands up like it's a free market, like that's fair somehow. So the Facebook Oversight Board released a statement Wednesday morning announcing that they would be upholding the January 7th decision to ban Trump from using the platform. So this is what the statement read off of Facebook. It stated, the board found that in maintaining an unfounded narrative of electoral fraud and persistent calls to action, Mr. Trump created an environment where a serious risk of violence was possible. On January 6th, Facebook's decision to impose restrictions on Mr. Trump's account was justified. The posts in question violated the rules of Facebook and Instagram that prohibit support or praise of violating events, including the riot that was then underway at the U.S. Capitol. Given the seriousness of the violations and the ongoing risk of violence, Facebook was justified in imposing account-level restrictions and extending those restrictions on January 7th. So the statement actually continues. The board they noted, however, that Facebook's imposition of an indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension was not appropriate. And this is where they come out and they say that they're going to give it another 6 months. The board insists that Facebook review this matter to determine and justify a proportionate response that is consistent with the rules that are applied to other users of this platform. Facebook must complete its review of this matter within 6 months of the date of the decision. So you guys have to remember, you had Trump, as he was the president, got kicked off of all social media platforms. Social media platforms was the way in which he communicated with the people because the corporate media wouldn't allow him to communicate with the people because they wanted to shut him down. They wanted to create a narrative to make everybody hate and dislike Donald Trump, which they did a pretty good job of doing so. All of that, he was the president who's supposed to be the most powerful man in the world. He's the president of the United States, and he can easily be silenced by big tech corporations. And by the way, the DNC is sitting there telling them to silence, do it. And you see conservatives, they come out, they don't really do anything, the Republican Party, on this. They didn't do anything the last 4 years. They just would have these stupid meetings on Capitol Hill where they would really sit there and question Jack Dorsey and the other one, Mark Zuckerberg, and make it like they really cared, but they didn't care. They just do their little thing. They gallivant around. A lot of them were falling asleep during the meetings. And this all ended with no work being done, and now we're completely shut down from society as conservatives. I put out videos, I notice that I am being suppressed. My things are being suppressed when I put them out. I know I'm not reaching the same amount of people that I was before, because they notice my channel's been getting a little bigger. My influence on Facebook, my page has been gaining more followers. So what they do is they suppress your content as much as they can. And this is just going to continue. And what the Democrats call for, and they have historically been calling for, they say, why is it that you don't do more of this? We had Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren talking about Twitter taking Trump off the platform. They said that before the election. They were saying that while they were like debating each other, they were calling for Twitter to pull him off the platform. Twitter, Facebook, all of them, they always wanted to pull him off the platform, but they knew if they did it right before the election, that would drive people out in droves to vote for Donald Trump. So they decided to do it after the election was over. That was their plan all along. They always wanted to do this, and then sit there and quote disinformation. So you have Liz Cheney, who's been kissing up to the Democrat Party and the establishment. She's kind of been talking about this a little bit. She's going to end up getting her seat taken by somebody else in this. I think she's like the Republican National Committee head or something of that nature. She represents the Republican Party in some sort of way. And Republicans, especially these establishment Republicans, they're starting to realize that Trump still has his hand on the pulse, or his finger on the pulse, in the Republican Party. He still has a lot of influence, and a lot of them are kind of separating. Some are picking Trump, and then some are going anti-Trump. So she wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. Like I said, this is a Breitbart piece written by Jacob Bliss. So Cheney, she brought up her public dispute with former President Trump that has been at the forefront of her argument ever since she voted to impeach the president. She said and I quote, and this is straight from her op-ed, Justice Department and multiple federal judges have suggested there is good reason to believe that Trump's language can provoke violence again. So she personally is standing behind this. She's standing behind the Facebook banning of Trump. The Republican Party said, the Republican Party is at a turning point. This is what the Republican said. This is what she said. The Republican Party is at a turning point. And she wants everyone to kind of choose a side with her, whether you're pro-Trump or you're against Trump. So she believes part of the Trump's plan was to, this is what she states, unravel critical elements of our constitutional structure that make democracy work. Do you notice just the broad statements? There's no specifics about this. She just says very broad statements about it. And that's because a lot of them do, because they don't understand the Constitution. They just think they can make broad statements and everyone's just going to take their side and agree with them. There's no specifics. They'll say, you did this, and they'll say, how specifically have I done that? Just like with liberals when they tell you to wear a mask outside, and you say, okay, so where's the statistical studies that show that I should be wearing a mask outside? And they go silent. They won't present anything. So while she does not hesitate to attack the former president, in comparison, Trump's favorability numbers have the former president at an overwhelmingly 60% net positive. So people are starting to realize that Trump has influence in the party. Currently, the Republican House leadership effort is to replace her as the House GOP conference chair by the end of next week. So they're getting rid of Liz Cheney, and they're going to put Elise Stefanik, a Republican from New York, in her place. Now, in addition to this, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, said he is done defending Cheney. According to reports, McCarthy was caught during an off-air hot mic moment with Fox and Friends co-host Steve Doocy, in which McCarthy said he has lost confidence in Cheney. So, here's to kind of sum this up. Elise Stefanik, she is also a establishment Republican. She's not someone that we should push for in that position, but that's what's going to go ahead. That's what's going to be done. Unfortunately, People are going to hate that I say this, but Trump really likes when people like him. That's kind of like his number one thing. You know, he thinks a lot about loyalty. It's kind of almost like a, you know, New Yorker thing. It's very, it makes sense. It makes sense. That's kind of how New Yorkers are. Nothing against you. So he likes this Elise Stefanik lady because she kind of, you know, she kissed up to him. And I don't think that's the person to choose. I also don't think the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, is a good person to choose either. I think he is so milquetoasty. I think he needs to go. I think Mitch McConnell, if the Republican Party ever takes a majority in the House or the Senate, the leaders should not be either one of them. I don't even know how they got into the position, in all honesty. We need conservatives. What I've noticed is the Republican voters are always much more conservative than the actual Republicans, because people that are very conservative, they believe in individual rights, individuality, okay? So they don't believe in this big groupthink ideology. They don't really want to get into government because they don't care enough about government, because they don't want government in their lives. So what you get stuck with is like these weird moderates. They're just pretty much rich guys that act like they're, you know, conservatives, but they're really not in practice. And you get these weird moderates, and they're the ones that end up running to be in the government. And that's why we're stuck with so many of these milquetoasty Republicans. And they're also looking for deals, book deals, whatever, to make extra money when they leave politics. And there's other people that just don't care about this. There's people like Ted Cruz, but even still, I just don't see, with the exception of Ron DeSantis, when I look around the entire Republican Party, I don't see anyone that's adamant, that is vehemently fighting for the constituency. I just don't see it. I think the constituency of the Republican Party is extremely conservative, but the Republican Party, the politicians are not. I think that's lost on everybody. So I have a Lincoln Project member, or an ex-Lincoln Project member. He is on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC. And just hear what he has to say. He's talking about Liz Cheney. Hear what he compares the Republican Party, the GOP, to. Play 9.
And it's really something hearing those comments from President George W. Bush. I've been thinking to myself this whole time, you know, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, the Taliban, the people who wanted to do harm to our nation and to our way of life and our democracy, they got nothing on what this Republican Party is doing. The idea that a member of their party, of their leadership, whose last name is Cheney, could be purged from their leadership for telling the truth about January 6th.
So this is why none of us listen to the opposition. The opposition, what they want, their guarantee is they want a dissemblance of the Republican Party. They want a one-party rule of the Democrat Party. Now, the problem with Liz Cheney has nothing to do with January 6th. It is specifically that she goes against everybody else in the Conservative Party. She votes for she goes against the Constitution when she is in favor of impeachment. She directly goes against the Constitution. There's nothing to support it constitutionally. So she has no standard. She has no conviction. Lincoln Project member, MSNBC, they're not going to tell you any of that. They're just going to kind of play the game. They're going to dance around. It really quite is astonishing that people are so dumb that they watch and actually believe and take anything in, and they take anything as fact that comes out of the mouths of some of these establishment Republican, the anti-Trumper, the Lincoln Project. Really, they're just big government establishment people. I think the Republican Party is built up of this. And he goes on, this guy, he compares the GOP to the Taliban to Al-Qaeda. The Republican Party is a bunch of terrorists, and here's the thing. The Republican Party is so soft that it's like, if you guys are going to call us terrorists, or if you're going to call Trump a Nazi, a racist, a this, a that, they call Trump all these things. Trump wasn't even extreme. He wasn't even radical. There's a bunch of conservatives out there that are so much more extreme in what your opinion would be of their politics, so much more radical than what you think of Trump, that it's like, at this point, we should just vote in a hardcore conservative, like super hardcore, straight down the line, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-freedom of speech. Just start destroying all these Democrat institutions and the corporate media. That's what we need to do. Whoever we elect next, and whoever we elect locally in any election in a general sense, they need to be a fighter for the conservative cause. That's what we should think at the end of the day. Are these people going to beat the Democrat Party into the ground, because that's all we need. Because they're sitting, if they're going to call us all these things already, if they're going to call us extreme, they're going to call us all these negative, adverse words to describe us and make it like we're extreme, we're like Al-Qaeda, then why is it that we don't just elect these extreme conservatives? Why don't we just do it at this point? They're going to paint us that way anyway. It's not like there's no point in conceding and kind of meeting somewhere in the middle and being, moderate and kind of you get something and we get something. There's no point, because no matter what, whoever we put up there, no matter what their politics are, they can be in the middle. They can be a moderate Republican, just like George Bush was, and you guys are going to destroy him. So it doesn't even matter. We might as well go with someone that's hard on the right. So next what I have the Biden, the Department of Justice. They're interfering with the Arizona vote count right now. Washington Times piece written by Andrew Blake. The U.S. Department of Justice expressed concerns Wednesday involving the unprecedented private recount currently underway of votes cast in the 2020 presidential election in Maricopa County, Arizona. So really, you had this woman, Pamela S. Carlin, a principal deputy assistant attorney general for the Justice Department of Civil Rights Division. So, because everything we put, there's buzzwords. We know what sells. The Democrat Party knows in their focus group tests that racism sells now. This is something that they can use to sway the public opinion. So now they have this lady that's in charge of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. She sends a letter to Arizona State Senate President Karen Fann, who's a Republican, about the steps to ensure the process complies with federal civil rights and voting laws. So what she wrote, and this is amazing, and really I'm just going to read off the very end what she says, because it's significant, and this is the scope in which they see everything. To begin with, they're having this private security company handle a lot of it. They're called Cyber Ninjas. That's the name of the company. So she writes, let's see where I can find it. Past experience with similar investigative efforts around the country has raised concerns that they can be directed at minority voters, which potentially can implicate the anti-intimidation prohibitions of the Voting Rights Act. She added, such investigative efforts can have a significant intimidating effect on qualified voters that can deter them from seeking to vote in the future. So they want to get involved for racism. They want to get involved in the recount because of racism. That's the position that they're taking, because they know if they sit there and point at racism all day, the Republican Party's been known to just back off. So that is the strategy that they're going with. This has nothing to do with racism. You going forward and asking anybody about even vote. I don't even know the way this process was taking place when I read through it. There's nothing here that require that, these people are going to go to individual people's houses and question them so they don't ever vote again. There's nothing extreme or radical about this recount. They're saying that we have a concern, Maricopa County. Let me see if I can find specifically what it is that they're going to be doing. There's really nothing here that I can find. So we really just have them calling it behind the guise of racism. You can't do the recount, essentially, and we want the Justice Department to get involved because we're corrupt, bureaucratic officials that are at the whims of the Democrat Party, because we're 80% Democrat Party that run us. It really is. It is just amazing what's going on right now, that they're going to go ahead and they're going to try to get involved with this. There's a lot of information with his Rudy Giuliani situation. They're going after him. They're going after John Solomon because they know what's on these Hunter Biden laptop, what's going on with these pictures. I don't know if the FBI is ever going to do anything, this independent counsel investigation. I don't think anything will come from it, because right now you have the authoritarian tyrants running the government. That's why I think nothing will happen at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether it's a special counsel, independent counsel. You have so much influence in the Democrat Party. You have them being ran. You have the corporate media carrying their water for them. And then you also have the big tech agencies doing the same thing to block out any type of dissidence, block out any dissenting view or opinion coming from the conservative side. So that's why I highly suggest you, and it's not in my interest personally, because I'm not going to have as many views on my podcast if I'm taking away time where you listen to me. I highly suggest you to find every type conservative podcasts, whatever you want to listen to all sides of the story so you can get as educated on everything, so you can get as informed on everything. I know Dan Bongino recently, he's been talking about some of this, how Soros is actually connected to it. George Soros is connected to some of these Facebook fact checkers, which, we've gone over before, and he's connected to a lot of this investigation into Solomon, this investigation into Rudy Giuliani as well. So I just highly suggest you all check that out. I mean, I know a lot of you folks have heard so much about the tyranny, so much about the Democrat hypocrisy and the corruption that you're aware of all of this stuff already. I mean, I'd like to think I have a very well-informed audience, as most conservative audiences are. We obviously know much more about the issues than any other, than the liberal class does, for sure. So next one I have is this health researchers. They concluded COVID mitigation efforts vast outweigh the benefits for 89% of the population. So this one's kind of complex a little bit. Foundation of Economic Freedom articles written by Brad Palumbo. So they had this study. We have two health researchers, and I'm trying to find their names. Charles L. Hooper of the Hoover Institute and David R. Henderson. So they had this study, this COVID mitigation measure study, to kind of assess the costs and the benefits of what we did with COVID, how we decided to shut down the economy, some of the unintended consequences of good intentions. So these two health researchers, they concluded that roughly 89% of Americans that the benefits of both voluntary and government mitigation efforts alike have been vastly outweighed by their costs. So this is what Charles L. Hooper wrote. The list of pandemic policy mistakes is long, but the most glaring was the failure to understand and act on the virus's propensity to attack the old and vulnerable. Policymakers failed, in other words, to understand the enemy. So what they did in this study is they looked at the fact that COVID-19 deaths varied widely among age groups, with an 85-year-old roughly 2,000 times more likely. So 85-year-olds were 2,000 times more likely to die from COVID than 18-year-olds. Then they calculated the expected life years lost from infection for different age groups. Using this, the researchers estimated the value gained on average from mitigation measures for individuals of different age groups. They weighed this against the cost of mitigation measures, which include, and I'm quoting here from their piece, reduced schooling, reduced economic activity, increased substance abuse, more suicides, more loneliness, reduced contact with loved ones, delayed cancer diagnoses, delayed childhood vaccinations, increased anxiety, lower wage growth, travel restrictions, reduced entertainment choices, and fewer opportunities for socializing and building friendships. So once they put together, obviously very complex study, they put together all these factors, and Hooper and Henderson concluded that only at economic, not social costs, mitigation efforts cost young people $102,000, but only preserved an average of 7.5 hours of life per individual. So pretty much what they're saying is, for 7.5 hours of your life that's been extended through these mitigation measures that we had, nationwide, especially for young people specifically, you save 7.5 hours of your life, but it will cost you during your entire lifespan $102,000, which is a huge chunk that's really could be a start to a retirement. And they stated that in their study. And really the question to ask is, would you rather have $102,000 or live 7.5 more hours? And I think everyone kind of has the answer to that. So that would also, you would have to value your time at $13,600 an hour, which is hilarious. So the benefits of protection measured in life expectancy are 210 times as high for the older person. So just at the end of the day here, really what they should have done is they should have took a comprehensive approach at this. And I do advise you to check out this piece. You're going to have the study linked into the show notes. Everything I refer to will be in the description below in the show notes, as always. But we should have been comprehensive. We should have done what Florida did, where they took all of the older people and they left them to themselves, and they separated everybody from those older people, and they isolated those older people because they knew that was the at-risk group. The at-risk groups should have been isolated, essentially. That should have been what was supposed to be done. That should have been the policy across the board throughout the nation, but that was not the case. And now we have people that have lost more than a year of their lives. Me personally, I feel like I have lost a year of my life. I've done nothing in this last year, especially when you live in New Jersey, where there's really nothing open to do anything, unless if you want to walk around with a mask and look like an idiot all the time. It's really what the problem is with this. We've allowed the government to supplant themselves and grow and grow and grow their powers, and now to roll back the powers that the government have gained and been granted during this time is going to be very difficult to do, especially if you live in a blue state. Now, if you live, in Florida, you've been living nice. You don't really have to worry about it, and those real estate prices have been skyrocketing. So if you bought a house like last year in Florida, most likely it's probably worth almost double of what it was worth a year ago. So last story I have leaked the ATF has a leaked proposal, and in this proposal, they leaked, I think it's 107 pages I read. This is an AmericaFirstFreedom.org piece. I'm trying to find the author now. It's written by Mark Chestnut, and they want to change the definition of a firearm in this 107-page draft rule that they had. What they want to do is they want to change what the definition of a frame or a receiver is, which at this time is not possible, considering what the federal firearm statutes are. And I really don't understand if the ATF can determine what is and what isn't. I feel like this is something that actually has to go through the Congress. It should have to go through the Congress if you want to federally enact this type of policy. It should have to go through the Congress. But it seems like they don't want to do anything through the Congress. So the proposed rule would also create a new marking requirement for certain federal firearms licensees that, according to the NRA, has no basis in federal statute. So they're really going, these memos that the ATF keeps coming out with, they're looking for ways to push new gun control, and it seems like all of this is unconstitutional. So what we're going to see now, and I'm telling you folks, is what's going to happen. If they go through stuff like this, you're going to start seeing these huge lawsuits against, not from the NRA, but against the NRA. What we'll have is lawsuits against the NRA, and the reason is they want to defund the NRA. So the NRA then can't sue the federal government for going forward with this, for going forward with somehow how memos from the ATF suddenly are now law. We're allowing bureaucrats in this country to make law when the Constitution doesn't state that. If you want to pass something changing, implementing new standards or qualifications for what a framer or a receiver is, then you have to go through the Congress to do that. You shouldn't just have an agency, a bureaucracy telling people what is and what isn't a frame or a receiver in a gun. Just simply put, that's constitutional. If you don't want representation in the government and you just want these bureaucracies to do their job, then most likely you're a Marxist, communist, Democrat at the end of the day. Because this is, if you want the representation from the government, you want the government to do what's good for what the people want, then in this case, you're just a Marxist communist if you agree with this decision. At the end of the day, you can agree with the decision, but the way in which it's being done, and for the Marxist commie Democrats, they don't really care about the means, it's the ends. So the ends for them justifies the means no matter what. They can go against the Constitution, they can go against civil liberties, it doesn't matter. None of that matters to them. What matters to them is victory. The ends to them is what matters the most, and the means of obtaining those ends, it doesn't matter if it's violating any constitutional provisions, any amendments. It does not matter to them. It's all about winning at the end of the day. So in the proposal, the ATF said the rule would likely have a significant impact on companies currently selling unfinished receivers. Those companies, it said, would need to adapt. Oh, look at that, folks. So what they want to do is they want to go, and this is them attempting to go after what they call ghost guns. They want to get rid of these receiver building kits, or these upper kits. You have these companies that make these upper kits, and then, you have to be somewhat adept in machine working to make these into an upper or a receiver, what have you. They want to change the classification to now make that part of a firearm, so you need to go to an FFL to go get that, so everything is registered. It's just another way for them to get you to register your guns with the federal government. So the document states, next, and I quote, based on current marketing related to the unregulated sale of certain firearm parts kits, ATF anticipates that these non-FFLs would either become FFLs or would take a loss in revenue to sell a parts kit that does not contain a frame or receiver, or simply sell the frame or receiver, but not both. The document further acknowledged that most of the companies that would be affected are small ones and could take a financial hit if the rule is approved. The document also stated the ATF estimates the majority of affected entities are small entities that would experience a range of costs. Therefore, this rule may have a significant impact on small entities. So they just want to take out business. This is the reason they want to strip liability protections from a lot of these firearms manufacturers. For example, if someone goes and shoots something up with a Remington, then now you can go and you can sue. If you're a victim in this, you can go and you can, if you're family, of a victim, you can sue Remington. And they want to defund the firearms industry, because what they'll do is, okay, if we defund the firearms industry, then, and this is really what the problem is here, this is where the government gets involved, then no one can ever buy a gun ever again, because they're making a firearm for them. You will not make money. There's no profit in making firearms for these companies. Or it will raise the price exponentially, and only the rich will be able to afford guns. They don't want the regular working class person able to afford guns. That's their big plan here. This is another way to disarm the citizens of the United States, to pull liability protections from them. And to give another comparison, that would be like me calling a mobster to take a hit out on somebody, right? And my service provider is AT&T. The victim would then be able to go and sue AT&T because I used AT&T to carry out a hit on somebody else. That's essentially what the government, that is the plan, and this is the idea of a public utility. And this is actually, and there's nothing written into the Constitution for the right to, be able to call someone on your cell phone or be able to communicate through some sort of different means other than word of mouth. This is actually written into the Constitution, and at the very end of the Second Amendment, it says shall not be infringed as well. But still, they want to open up these companies for liability, to take away their liability protection. That's what they want to do, and that is it's not really even a subliminal way to take out the firearms market, but that's what they're attempting to do this entire time. And they've been attempting to do this now for a while. I don't know if this anything in the Second Amendment, I don't really think it's ever going to pan out for the Democrat Party, but I guess we're going to have to see. So what I have to end, I got a couple of quick headlines. I have this ignorant teacher and her interaction with the police. This is a pretty viral clip. If you haven't seen it yet, you have this woman gets pulled over by a Hispanic police officer, and she's a black woman. She is extremely racist towards him, keeps calling him a murderer, very unprofessional, and then, utters that she's a teacher with such grace, of course, because, they're the true heroes out there. Play 2.
At 38.
Yes, you are, ma'am. Good morning.
And the speed limit is 40, and I was going 38, so why are you harassing me?
You are correct. I pulled you over because
you're a murderer. Yes, I started to record because you're a murderer.
You can't be on your cell phone while you're driving.
I wasn't on my phone. I was recording you because you scared me.
You can't use your cell phone while you're recording.
I can record you.
May I have your driver's license?
It's at my apartment.
What's your apartment?
It's at my home. I'm just taking my son to his.
Do you have your driver's license?
I mistakenly left it at home.
Do you have a picture of your driver's license?
Yes, I do.
May I have it?
And can you call your supervisor, please?
I already did. He's on his way.
Good, because you're a murderer.
Okay.
And so you're giving me a cell phone ticket? Is that why you're harassing me?
Not harassment. Yeah. I am enforcing the law.
I have a right to record the police when they're harassing me.
By all means, but you can't do it while you're driving.
I wasn't texting or none of that.
Do you have that
you
picture?
scared me and made me think you were going to murder me.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, it's not just a feeling, you're a murderer.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that for me, dear?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'm perfectly legal, and I'm a teacher. So there.
Congratulations.
Murderer. You're a murderer.
What's your last name? I can't see that there.
Well,
If
here you
stop,
go,
Stop
murderer.
shaking. Zoom in on that for
No,
me,
because
right?
you're scaring me.
Oh,
You're threatening to kill me and my son. Can you give me
Okay.
the
Well,
iPad,
I'll
please?
tell you what, you keep smiling, you're on camera.
You're trying to threaten to kill me.
I
I'm not
didn't say
smiling.
that.
You're the one who's
Hold that still, I can't see that. Is this your car?
Yes, it is. You're trying to say I stole my own car because you're jealous?
Yeah,
Is that what
I don't
that's
think
about?
so. You wait for me right here, okay?
You're jealous?
Citation. All you need to do is your signature. He's only citing you for using your cell phone while you're driving. That's it.
There you go, ma'am. Sign inside the
For
red
being
box
a-
right
for
there.
him being a Mexican racist. What is that name?
It's on the
Gasso.
citation, ma'am.
Here you go, Mexican racist. You're always going to be a Mexican. You'll never be white. You know that, right? You'll never be white, which is what you really want to be.
There you
want
go,
to be
dear.
white.
Have a good day.
You want to be white so bad.
Let me tell you, I do admire the restraint from that officer. That woman, that's appalling, that type of behavior. But of course, you know, you've not seen this anywhere in the corporate media, right? There's nowhere to be found. These are interactions that police officers have probably maybe once a week, maybe every single day. They have these exact interactions where you have someone calling you racist, saying that you're a murderer before you've done anything. Oh, I felt threatened by you. I felt like you were going to murder me. What, by my mere existence? You felt like that I was going to murder you? And of course, that's a teacher. She has not been released to the public, her identity, a picture of her. So these parents of these children that are being taught by her have no right to know how crazy and how much of a lunatic their teacher is. And when we're calling for public, like this guy recently, they came out with the video making fun of LeBron James. It was a cop, he was in uniform. He got suspended for a couple of weeks. For what he did. Now, this woman gets nothing. There's no repercussions for that type of behavior. She's a public employee. You want somebody like that teaching your kids? Are you kidding? You want somebody like that teaching your kids? And I've heard so many stories of teachers that are quitting, retiring, moving to different school districts. They're done with the political correctness. They're just done with it. They're now teaching, and this is great when I hear this. They're teaching Hispanic children. And a white teacher, a white liberal teacher, is telling Hispanic children that they are Latinx. They're telling you have white liberals, white elitist liberals, telling Hispanic people that they're Latinx. That's they're telling them what they are. Oh, this is how your culture works. We have white, progressive, rich libs telling others how their culture is supposed to work and what they're supposed to call each other. If you go up to a Hispanic person, you ask them, "Oh, you're Latinx," they will be like, "What are you talking about?" There's a masculine and a feminine in almost every single word in terms of every noun in the Spanish language. There's a masculine or feminine. So if you ask a Hispanic woman, you know, are you Latinx? She'll probably tell you she's a Latina. If you ask a Hispanic man if he's Latinx, he'll probably tell you he's a Latino. These people, they are very traditional in a lot of ways, which is a good thing. They're traditional, so when they look at this Latinx, this is just white progressives and AOC, because she's like a white progressive telling Hispanic people with their Hispanic heritage how their culture is supposed to be, what they're supposed to accept, what their name, what their ethnicity is. They're supposed to call themselves Latinx or Latinx. That one, more than anything, is the most reprehensible. That is the idea. When you talk about, you sit here and say white privilege, all this white privilege, rich white liberals are telling Hispanic people that they are Latinx. They are changing what their ethnicity is because they, at their own whim, because they think it causes some sort of inclusion. Honest to God, it is amazing to me. I cannot comprehend it. I cannot understand it. And there should be a great and a very strong pushback from the Hispanic community telling these white rich liberals, most of them women, should tell them, hey, listen, how about you teach my kid about something of substance? We'll let the cultural teachings, that'll take place in the household. So, quick headlines. TikTok permanently banned Young Americans Against Socialism. Then shortly thereafter reinstated them. I thought that was important because TikTok's run by the Chinese. It's a Chinese company. Obviously, if you're against socialism, you're against communist China, because socialism is Marxism, is communism. Eventually, it turns into that. So study shows vaccine works against different variants. I thought this was a very important step, but there really wasn't much. There wasn't much to it substantively. But they had this study, Daily Caller piece, talking about how the Moderna and the Pfizer shots protected against variants as well. Lastly, Hillary Clinton, doesn't want to pull out of Afghanistan. Just a news piece. They actually had a video of her talking. I just could not, for the life of me, record it because I didn't want to even listen to her. It's very difficult to listen to her or Kamala. I don't know which one is actually cringier. But she doesn't want to pull out. She thinks that there's going to be some sort of unintended consequence with a withdrawal from Afghanistan. So that will conclude this one. I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in. Just keep fighting the conservative fight. That's all I ask for myself. I will continue to do what I do, say whatever I want. Please like, share, subscribe. Drop the mic is in my name, Mike, on people. Let them know about the podcast. Say, hey, we have this guy with a very different point of view that reports in a conservative way the news. He is an opinion guy. He's a droid. He's very skillful. Tell them that as well. Maybe try to get them to listen to the podcast. So I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday. Or not Monday. Housekeeping. Forgot to mention this, I think. This next coming week, I will not have any Federalist paper podcast Monday or Friday, but I will still have the current event podcasts Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning. So what'll happen is it gets released Tuesday night. You know, people probably wake up Wednesday morning and they see it's been downloaded on their phone. So that one's always recorded Tuesday nights. And then I'll have the weekend special, as always, on Saturday nights. So thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you next time.